A chilling new doomsday thriller hits in 2024. Fall asleep, and you die without a sound. Unknown virus? Or supernatural force? Let's dive right in. David jolts awake from a nightmare, startling his night shift colleague. Security footage shows his head lolling, then collapsing chair and all. That fall, it saved his life. Post-shift, Matt drags him to an after-hours party. David resists, till hearing his ex will be there. They arrive at a remote house. Regret hits immediately. Party's over, ex gone home. Only sleepless revelers remain. Matt shoves someone while complaining, knocking over a sleeping man. The man isn't breathing. David orders a 911 call, but all lines are... He races upstairs for help, finding the hosts mysteriously dead. Gas leak. David thinks. Priority. Get 3 victims to ER. At the hospital minutes later, open ambulance doors spike dread. Corridors overflow with corpses. David grabs a nurse. 3 critical in car. Nurse checks. He shook his head immediately. They've been dead for over 2 hours. We should report this to the police, David. Frustration in his voice. Shouldn't hospitals handle bodies? Irene sighed helplessly. We're overwhelmed with the surge in deaths tonight. Severely understaffed. David was speechless, deciding to wait till morning when the hospital resumed normal operations. He noticed a father and daughter across the aisle. The daughter urged gently, "Get some rest, Dad. Regain your strength." Meanwhile, Irene reminded her colleague kindly, "You've been working since yesterday. Time to take a break." Within minutes, David saw the father foaming at the mouth. He rushed to warn the daughter, only to find both inexplicably lifeless. After learning what happened, Irene went to fetch her colleague, but found him not breathing either. All 3 realized the horrifying truth simultaneously. "It sounds impossible," Irene muttered, reaching for the phone to call the police. But lines were busy or calls went unanswered. "We must go to the station ourselves," she insisted, "or more will die in their sleep." As dawn broke, they hurried into the car. In town center, Irene's sharp eyes caught something amiss. "Stop the car, Matt," she yelled. "Can't you see? The streets are deserted." While David scanned in disbelief, Irene fired a warning shot skyward. No living soul emerged. David ventured into a nearby apartment building. After searching, he found a couple in their bedroom, cold and still. Now everyone finally accepted the grim reality. The entire town was hit by the sleep-induced death phenomenon. Going to the police is pointless now. Our urgent task is to warn relatives and friends, not to fall asleep. David immediately called his ex-girlfriend, but her phone was off. Matt and Irene faced the same situation. It appears their loved ones perished in their sleep last night. Irene thought of night shift workers and knew they must be warned. Matt suggested heading to a nearby radio station to broadcast the warning citywide. But as they prepared to leave, their car broke down at the worst moment. While Matt fixed the car, David redialed his ex's number. This time she answered, but her icy tone snapped at David to stop bothering her. She'd been up all night and was finally going to sleep. David panicked as she hung up before he could explain, forcing him to race to her place. Matt muttered pathetic before resuming repairs. Irene learned through conversation. Both were military vets, with Matt being a former pilot. His mechanical skills proved vital as soon. He got the stalled engine running. They sped to the radio station, finding all staff dead as feared. Meanwhile, David raced toward his ex's home. Every minute counted. A delay meant greater danger. Countless corpses lining the streets were grim proof. Breathless, he reached her door, kicked it open, and rushed to the bedroom, only to find her bed empty. While he was puzzled, a blunt strike suddenly hit him from behind. Turns out his girlfriend mistook him for a burglar. David frantically explained, begging her not to sleep. But Katie thought he was making excuses to get close. His fabricated horror stories during their relationship were already absurd enough. He then tried calling the police. But as David predicted, no one answered. Then Irene's voice crackled through the radio. "Stay awake at all costs." Only then did Katie believe him. Soon Irene and Matt rushed to the apartment, and the 4 began strategizing. Their next move: "We can't stay awake forever." David knew best. After 48 hours max, people hallucinate, hear voices, go manic. "We must find why sleep kills," Irene insisted, "or we're all doomed." Back at the hospital, David aimed to use medical equipment to autopsy some victims. Katie heard faint moans down a corridor. Inside, an elderly cancer patient lay breathing. Pain meds let her sleep. Irene explained. By sheer luck, she escaped the death-sleep curse. Focus, Irene warned, prepping for dissection. She distributed adrenaline shots. Temporary relief from exhaustion. Matt anxiously called FBI and CDC, but all lines were dead. Has this catastrophe gone global? Irene shook her head and motioned for everyone to suit up. She'd selected a patient who died during sleep, with David and Matt documenting while Erin performed the dissection herself. As she began incising the cranium, wisps of smoke rose, making them all widen. There on the brainstem was etched that eerie, triangular symbol. David was drenched in cold sweat. He'd seen this symbol in his dreams. The others didn't notice David's reaction, still debating the symbol's origin. Current technology couldn't possibly engrave through bone. Irene felt her focus shatter. This horror defied all reason. Only David sat cornered, desperately piecing together dream fragments. Katie sent something off and pressed him until David confessed his lifelong secret. A childhood affliction. Whenever he slept, the same nightmare consumed him. The Elephant Man's gory face, the masked one's terror. Countless deaths by the Elephant Man over years, each leaving that triangular scar. To outsiders, it sounded like gibberish. When he'd mentioned it to his girlfriend, it drove her up the wall. She thought him mentally ill and left him. Now, after witnessing sleep death firsthand, Katie fully believed David's nightmare and deeply regretted her past cruelty. In the hospital, Irene prepares to change the dressing for the terminally ill patient, when the elderly woman suddenly asks why her family hasn't contacted her after all this time. As minutes tick by, Matt spots Irene wheeling the woman into an examination room from the stairwell and rushes out to warn David and Katie, sensing impending danger. They race back only to find the examination room door locked. Inside, Irene administers sleep medication to monitor the woman's death via EEG equipment. Katie accuses her of insanity, but Irene insists. The patient chose this after learning her loved ones perished in the catastrophe and refused to survive alone. Despite their desperate pleas, the group can't stop the woman's final choice. As the patient's eyelids close, Irene records intense neural activity. Post-analysis reveals critical anomalies. 2 brainwave patterns spiked before cardiac arrest, meaning she died within her dream. Matt protests, David concurs, having survived countless dream deaths himself. Amidst heavy silence, David queries, how long after sleep did death occur? 3 minutes, Irene confirms. David declares he'll enter sleep to witness these lethal dreams firsthand. Matt berates his recklessness, but David knows the stakes. Wake me before 3 minutes, he orders. Preparations complete, David settles onto pillows. Exhausted after 40-plus hours awake. The moment he relaxed, he was pulled into deep sleep. Suddenly, he found himself in a desolate grassland, with iron chains shackling his feet, rendering him nearly immobile. An ethereal voice echoed, "You thirst." Compelled to drink, David instinctively crawled toward the lake, but the chains held him fast. Parched despite the nearby water, he watched it ripple. Then his deceased mother appeared, offering a glass of water. David reached eagerly, only to see the triangle symbol reflected in the glass. "Drink," she urged, "and your thirst will be quenched." As David raised it, a spectral wail breached overhead, revealing the masked figure nearby. The figure warded off the apparition. "Look closer," it commanded. Recognition struck him. This was the mark of dread left by the Elephantine One. Memories crystallized. This entity had repeatedly urged him to join their ranks. To Arista, the masked figure intoned, fading from view. The water-bearing mother morphed into the Elephantine One. Irene's shout ripped David back to reality. Barely 2 minutes since he'd succumbed to sleep, he recounted the nightmare, voice trembling with residual terror. "That water would have been my end." Some force twists our dreams, he realized, manifesting our deepest fears to kill us as we sleep. But the masked figure intervened. David recalled its parting words. Arista could be the key to breaking this curse. Madness. Yet no one offered a better alternative. In the end, they decided to risk everything, to grasp for that sliver of hope before death. Matt had checked a map earlier. Even flying would take over 10 hours. After 50-plus hours without sleep, David snapped. "Are we just waiting to die here?" The next moment, everyone scrambled to pack. Stimulants became their top priority. With everything ready, Mark the driver kept psyching himself up. First they'd drive to a private airfield to commandeer a plane for the journey to the island. As they drove, David suddenly had nothing to do. Crushing fatigue overwhelmed him. He fought to keep his eyes open, only to discover Katie had fallen asleep. David shuddered violently, grabbing an adrenaline shot from his pack, and jammed it into her. Katie jolted awake. The commotion banished everyone's drowsiness. Soon they reached the private airfield. Just as expected, not a living soul in sight. Matt chose the sleekest plane, skimming the manual briefly, before firing up the engines. As the jet climbed into blue skies, David knew the real ordeal was just beginning. Katie succumbed first, her eyes shutting unnoticed. Aaron tried another adrenaline shot, but this time, there was no response. David let out a desperate roar. Their journey had barely started. Yet his love was already gone. His grief soon yielded to exhaustion. Pilot Matt bit his own, arm bloody, fighting sleep. Yet his eyelids kept drooping. Aaron spotted the danger and swiftly injected medication. Matt's much more alert now, but what happens next is up to him. We can't administer this drug repeatedly, and David's deteriorating faster. He's starting to hallucinate. Though knowing it's unreal, his eyes insist it's terrifyingly real. Just as David's about to break, Matt grits his teeth through the pain, pouring the last alcohol on his wound, and spots the fabled Arist Island. No runway in sight forces Matt into an emergency sea landing. The plane plunges violently into the raging ocean. Miraculously, David's trio swims ashore safely. That near-death experience, soaked in seawater, has jolted all drowsiness away. David feels uncannily familiar. He's dreamed this place countless times. Reach the summit, and salvation awaits. Mid-climb, a psychic stab pierces their minds, revealing Katie's corpse in a coffin. A figure in white urges them to rest beside their fallen comrade. David recognizes the Elephant Man's trick to halt their ascent. He drags himself to the coffin for a final farewell to Katie, slamming it shut with all his strength. Suddenly, they're back on a mountainside. Above them, a stone fortress crowns the peak, their final destination. An elder approaches, smiling. "You're safe now." They materialize in a sanctuary community, teeming with global survivors. "The masked one summoned us all," the elder explains. David was puzzled. Who truly wants to exterminate humanity? The old man smiled. "You must ask the masked man himself." Soon after, David entered the stone structure, reuniting with the masked man from his dreams. He revealed, "Evil spirits have invaded our world, and the whales, as nature's guardians, now recruit warriors worldwide." David is one such warrior, yet he remained perplexed. Is our battle truly not over? The masked man nodded solemnly. Suddenly, the dream dead awakened, their pupils flashing with sinister triangular symbols. That concludes Season 1 of Edge of Eternal Slumber.